Hello, parents. Welcome to the Masterful Parenting Podcast. I'm Ann Alvarez, parent coach, school counselor, and mother of two. Do you sometimes struggle with your parenting role? Do you notice that sometimes you're repeating patterns that you learned in your own childhood? Maybe you are carrying childhood pain that has not been healed, and you notice that it is showing up in your parenting with your own children. Perhaps you yell or get frustrated easily. Maybe you are directing them or telling them what to do all the time, and you notice that your actions are affecting your relationship with your children. Well, parents, I totally understand this. I came from childhood pain and I learned how to be a relational parent with my children. And I can teach this to you as well. This podcast is all about learning how to heal the childhood pain that we are carrying so that we can foster healthy relationships with our kids. Join us every week for a new show, and we will dive into the healing and the fostering of healthy relationships with our children. Did it record? Hold on a second. Hello, parents. Welcome to the Masterful Parenting Podcast and YouTube channel. I am super excited because I have a special guest. His name is Patrick Murakami. And he is a Christian entrepreneur, a coach, and survivor, unpurposed and unfinished, who equips moms and dads to lead at home like founders, build faith aligned businesses, and raise kid entrepreneurs. He and his wife are raising a 10-year-old entrepreneur. Welcome, Patrick.
Thank you so much for having me today. I greatly appreciate it.
Oh, I'm so excited. All right, we're going to get into it.
Yes.
How would you describe your approach to parenting?
Well, I think that all of us always want to be better than what we had, right? I believe that's always the goal. But I've found that, we grew up in a time frame when a lot of our parents were also unbalanced. Parents, fathers, we were always kind of, told to throw dirt on it, and women were told to be, ladylike, don't show anger. So there's a lot of emotions that maybe we didn't get a chance to experience growing up. And so our approach really is to understand the emotional intelligence and really guide that to allow children to basically make informed decisions. And it is a lot of work, when your child says why, and you have to explain the why, and then they ask why to that. And, a lot of times it's at a younger age where you kind of see that, but as they get older, it's so important for them to know that you are going to just help them find the answer instead of just saying, because I said so, with what so many of us grew up with.
Exactly. I can totally relate to that because our kids want to know.
Mm.
And when we shut them down, we're not actually helping them grow, right? We're not actually helping them when we shut down their questions.
Yes.
Um, but it does take work because you have to think about it. Well, what is the why, right?
Yes.
Probably you grew up with, I don't know, maybe you're the same as me, but I grew up with don't question.
Yes.
You're not allowed to question.
Yes.
I'm your parent. You listen to me,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and I think a lot of what we see now is you'll find out when you're older. And it's such a hard piece because there are certain things that you don't want your kids to have to know maybe certain struggles or pain points or even consider those right now because you want them to be children. But also at the same time, you want them to realize that, there are certain things and certain conversations that maybe they just shouldn't be privy to at this point in time. So it's a fine line of trying to understand that.
Exactly. Why do you think it's so important to develop like emotional intelligence in our kids? And how do we teach that to them?
Yes. So emotional intelligence was something that I first started off with sales. And what I learned is that when you can build trust, it opens up dialogue. And
Mm.
so with even children, a lot of times when we meet them at their level, sometimes it getting down on one knee to get to their height, maybe going down on the floor to play with them. There's automatic trust built with them because they're constantly looking up. And so when you get down to their level, there's that trustability. And so when you can level out the playing field, so to speak, where that trustability, they're more vested. They want to learn more. They are more interested in what you have to say or what you show them. They're willing to maybe take some direction. How many times as a parent have you basically turned around and a kid brought you a toy and then you just kind of like you show them really quickly and they're like, oh, okay, and then they lose interest. But when you get down on the floor and you show them the intricacies, hey, check this out, right? They're interested and they spend more time with it. So that emotional intelligence piece opens up dialogue and trustability. From a chemical standpoint, when you build trust and emotional intelligence, you release oxytocin versus cortisol. And that basically unleashes all that trustability that we've talked about versus that fight or flight mode that you go through when cortisol is released.
Right, right. So that's like that cortisol is the stress, right? The
Yes.
stress, and
Yes.
then what did you call it?
Oxytocin.
The oxytocin is the feel
Yes,
good
that's
chemical,
trustability.
right?
Yep,
In the brain.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. And so, well, how do we teach it? I know you said go down to their level
Yes,
and involve them, right? Because it's about connection, right? So
100%.
you're working on how do I connect with my child?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think I've seen it in both sides, right? But there's I guess a stigma that a certain age that men basically don't connect with their children. And again, a lot of it is maybe the upbringing, a lot of it maybe pride or ego. But the thing is that our kids do see everything that we do. And so if we don't take time to include them, if we don't take time to explain why something works, if we just do it and give the final product, a lot of people are problem solvers. So they go straight into just fixing the problem instead of basically explaining. So one of the things that you can do is, take a simple concept of, let's say, making dinner, right? And so a lot of times, hey, I'm hungry. What do I eat? And then it's turning around and saying, hey, let me show you how this is made. And then quickly you basically go from, okay, so we have to prepare the meat. We've got to cut the veggies, right? We've got to wash them, all these things. And then when you throw them all together, and then you know that flavor that you like on a steak, right? It's because it's salted. So we throw the salt here and we do this, right? But when you explain that, and by the time that they eat the meal, they now have an understanding of what it took to prep, what it took to get there. And same thing with our conversation, same thing when we diagnose problems, right? Same thing when we talk about, common things, maybe money, right, in a household, right? There's a lot of things when the kids are listening and they're either, again, they're suppressed or they think that they can't ask in those conversations. Well, what does it mean that you have, when is payday? What does that mean, right? And what does that mean for us as a family? Because a lot of times people are, it's like, oh, I've got to wait till next week so I can pay my bills. Well, what does that do for your children if they just know and only see the hustle and the bustle piece, right? What happens if you turn around and say, okay, look, this is how we pay ourselves, then we pay our bills, then we pay, and then the rest can go towards, X, Y, and Z, entertainment or whatever.
Yeah.
But when you break that down, now your kids have a better understanding of
Mm.
money. And so I'm using several examples, but the idea really is that when you show them how something works, when you walk them through your world, but then try to see if anything makes sense to them. And it doesn't have to necessarily click for them right now, but the ideas and the concepts of how they come to formulate this rather than being introduced to it by an outsider, by television, by TV or media. When they learn from you directly, they're going to absorb it so much more.
Yeah, I really totally agree. I realized that it's never too young to start.
Mm,
But I remember as a young mother that I would be so concerned about getting things done that I would like sit my oldest in front of a show, like an educational show, Magic School Bus or whatever it was.
mm,
And then I would go into like the kitchen and make dinner and clean up and stuff like that. And what I realized, because I've been like, I follow a few YouTube channels, right? And what I realized is at a young age, you can involve them in your lives. Like
Mm.
you can actually sit them and show them, I'm cutting vegetables. I'm this and now them put heating the water, right? You can like
Yes.
do that with them because they're in such a stage of absorbing so much learning.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's what I learned. I learned that you can start at a young age involving them in what you're doing and teaching them. And then they're so much more capable and confident because
Yes.
you've involved them in the day-to-day things of living, right?
Right. Yes, 100%.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what that, I think that's one of my mistakes. But I know now that my youngest is a teenager.
Mm.
He wants to know. So he'll be like, "Can you show me?
Mm. Yeah.
And can we cook this together?" So then he's doing the inviting, and I'm like, "Yes, let's do this." Right? So
Yes.
it's never too late, but it's also never too early, right?
Correct. Correct. Yes. Yes. Obviously, there's precautions, right? And it's crazy that we always have to introduce these things, but you don't want to hand your 2-year-old just a knife and say start
Yes.
cutting vegetables, right? So there's always precautions.
Hmm.
But you can introduce them the concept, right?
Yes.
Of, hey, when you're older, you can do this, right? Or
Yes.
or make it fun. What are the vegetables that you can rip and tear and break, so
Yes.
you don't have to use maybe a knife.
Yes.
Unless you're a world-renowned chef, it probably doesn't matter how dinner comes out looking, right?
Exactly.
But the idea to be able to involve them somehow.
I'm totally with you. Safety first, but the dialogue of what you're doing to them is good. You can
Yes.
explain and talk. This is all connecting, right? When you're when you're having this conversation, say, "Mom's gonna cut the carrot now," or whatever it is, right?
Yes.
So so
It-
good, so
yeah.
good. Okay, we're gonna talk about how we help our kids to think in more philanthropic ways, like out of themselves and thinking about others and community. How do we
Yeah.
do that, Patrick?
So it's a weird spot, right? Because part of me really believes that my son is leading us oftentimes, and I think there's a study that says as young as 2 months old that babies kind of train us, So a lot of times people make like the funniest faces and hit a high pitch that maybe they would never hit anywhere else unless they're talking to a baby, trying to get a reaction. And
Yeah.
so while I'd like to think that I'm imparting wisdom to my son, a lot of it is us kind of following his journey and learning from him as much. But I think it's one, him being exposed to community, him being able to have dialogue and conversation with adults, but also realize that in order to make impact around him, it starts with self. And,
Right.
we had really shared the story a very long when he was probably about 4 or 5 years old, where we just said, there was a man who once wanted to change the world. And then he realized that maybe the world was too big. So then he was thought, what, maybe I'll start within my country. And he's like, well, I don't really know how to talk to anybody nationally, so I'm going to start more of on a state level. And then he's like, well, I don't even really drive up to my state capital, so maybe I'll just start here in my city. And even then, he was like, oh man, I'm still overwhelmed, so let me start my neighborhood. And still, he was like, I'm not seeing the results that I wanted. And he's like, I'll start with my family. And then nothing happened because it was him trying to influence other people. And then he said, oh, let me start with myself. And then as transformation within himself started, his family started to notice and started to transform, which impacted the neighborhood, then the city, then going nationally, then eventually global. But the idea was having a great understanding of who you are. And it's hard to teach a kid to be fully themselves in some ways, because in some ways we're the ones that limit them
Mhm.
because we're the ones that push our fears onto them, right? How many parents have known that their kid is that daredevil type because he's jumping off the couch, but we're the ones always saying, no, don't do that. And
Yes.
how many of them have gone on to be like moguls and in the Olympics, doing these aerial jumps and things like that. And so it's kind of understanding and cultivating who your child is, but
Yes.
giving them the confidence to turn around and say, what do you want to do? And so we started my son with a seasonal snow cone business. It was the old Snoopy machine that still doesn't work very well now. And he took whatever he made that summer and turned around and invested into a machine that actually melts ice and grinds it down. So he did this for about 3 years seasonally. And then in his third year, he had overheard conversations of my wife and I basically talking about which organizations should we help. And then he said, you know what? I think I want to donate. And we said, okay, what are you thinking? And he said, um, he's like, I don't know, but I want to do something that helps children. So we decided to basically, instead of just saying, okay, great, let's pick an organization, we called the organizations. We said, can you tell us about some of these? And some of them were, they didn't have maybe the time that day. Some of them were said, this is what we're about. And then I remember Make-A-Wish giving us a call, Make-A-Wish Colorado. So why don't you bring your son here and he can experience the entire process of what our wish kids go through. And so we did. We went and we sat in the room where the kids were making the wishes. They fully explained what they do, what the organization represents. And I remember him looking at me sitting in the room where the kids make their wishes. And he said, this is the one. And so ever since then, he's been a partner with Make-A-Wish Colorado. But the idea wasn't just, it starts with having the conversation, but then it is feeding that curiosity. Right? How many
Mhm.
parents would have just said, okay, well, let's call our local children's hospital. Let's call, so and so, and then just see if we can make a donation. But for him to actually want to seek out and for us to basically take that time to say, this is how you get involved.
Mhm.
And, we rolled out the whole red carpet. We bought one of those large checks for him to write and fill out and donate. We've got pictures of it. But the idea for him to know that he's doing a big thing and to celebrate that. And I think a lot of times people think that we have to have these really big, grandiose ideas to make our kids have these core memories, but we just have to be present in the moment. We have to be willing to to see what it is that they're understanding. And sometimes we overcomplicate things, especially as
Mhm.
parents. We
Mhm.
have a tendency to think that maybe we know what's best. And generally speaking, we do want to protect our kids. We do want to set them up for success. But a lot of times, our wishes and our wants for our kids overtake maybe what they actually need in that moment. And so a core memory can be unlocked just from being in the moment. And I think that it starts with those types of conversations. And then again, answering that why or providing the education and the layers to understand if this happens, then this is a result. If this happens, this could be a negative result that comes from that, right? And so being
Mhm.
able to explain potential consequences and outcomes, but then allowing them to have that critical thinking, and to be informed enough to hopefully make a well-informed decision and hopefully the right decision.
Yes, yes, yes. You unpacked a lot there. What stands out for me is supporting the ideas of our kids,
Mm.
and that's what
Yes.
you did by calling around saying, well, let's get on board. This is your idea, but let's figure it out. Let me help you. Let me support you in your
Yes.
idea instead of like figure it out yourself and go do it yourself, right?
Right.
Like that's huge. That is really huge because then now your son feels supported and feels like mom and dad they're gonna help me nurture my dream. They're gonna help me uh, move towards my dream, right? I'm not
Yeah.
alone. I'm being supported. I just love that so much. I was going to ask you though, like, um, it just brought back a memory for me with my oldest, teaching him about money because I was never taught about money
Oh, sure.
as a kid. And so for me, I really wanted to make sure that my boys know about money. And I had an aunt that taught me the three S's of money: save, spend, and share,
Mm.
which reminds me of like your son's desire to help others. And my oldest he had three buckets: save, spend, share. I told him he could put whatever he wanted in each bucket. At the time, I gave him an allowance. And so the three piles, and he had accumulated over a few years quite a lot of money in the share pile. And then we had an event at school, and he wanted to donate all of the money in his share pile to
Mm,
that event. It was a Terry Fox event supporting making progress in cancer research. And so one day he just took it and he just gave it all away. And I don't know, I was so proud of him that
that's
day.
amazing.
Yeah, I was so proud of him that day because I was like, oh, okay, he gets it. He
Yes.
gets it. That the sharing is super important when we share our wealth, right?
Yes,
Um,
and it was already put in his mind that that money was designated for that, right? So there was no question. There was like, oh, I need to save this just in case, right? Because it was already designated for that. And I think a lot of times, especially with finances, we have
yes.
a tendency where they're all in one bucket. And so when you don't explain, right, where you don't have these things kind of already set up, right? You don't have funds for a rainy day. You don't have a place to put money specifically spent for saving or sharing or spending even. It makes a big difference. And so this is something I learned from my financial advisor years ago. He basically said instead of putting money in the bank for your son, he said just basically, do a matching contribution, and he's like, what's, 10% for, $10 or whatever, right? But eventually he's like, what you do is you create a balance sheet and you show them, look, if you want to spend this today, this is what you will spend, and this will take from your balance, and this is what you could earn off of your match if you wait 30 days or 60 days. And so if you really want this today, here's what you'll miss out. But if you wait 30 days and get it next month, you could get that and still make some. And so he actually has to figure out and look at the balance sheet now to figure out, is it worth spending? Is it
Mm.
something that I can do today or can I wait? But it's also now taught him to become really good at using other people's money. So if dad won't pay for it, maybe grandma will pay for it, maybe auntie and
Yeah.
uncle will pay for it, right? So
Yes.
he's learned how to basically understand what his balance and then he turns around and he's like, well, I could afford that, but if I take that away, he's like, I could afford it twice in the next month versus and still make a little bit on top. And so
Right.
the thought process, it also eliminates maybe some of that immediate impulse buys and
Yeah.
actions that, I think that a lot of media and a lot of advertising is geared towards.
Right. Right. I think we set up our kids for abundance and wealth when we teach them about delayed gratification
Yes.
and how you have to use your money to make more money,
Yes.
right? I think those are like the key things, right? With creating abundance is use your money to make more money. Figure out a way to do that, right? Make your
Yes.
money work for you, and then delay what figure out what you really want and do you really want that and need that, right?
Yes.
Being
Yes.
wise about your spending.
Yeah. Yeah. We
Yeah.
talk a lot about creating your own opportunity, which is so hard for people who maybe are not in the entrepreneurial world, or maybe you're not in a sales type environment. But I feel like that a lot of kids, if they had this skill set, then they would have much more confidence to go out into the world to try things. Even the idea of maybe a gap year between graduation of high school and going to college now is becoming an increased popular idea. And it's because the dropout rates or the change of whatever their occupation is going to be or their degree is going to be and changes so often that, people can't afford to not know what they want to go into school for. And so
Mhm.
being able to really take that time, but if you had the opportunity to create for yourself maybe some wealth or to create an opportunity that says, I'm going to take my chance on maybe launching this business, right?
Mhm.
It gives them the confidence to turn around and say, I know how to do this because I've done it my whole life, versus well, now I have to really figure out what I want to do and I can't mess it up. And that's a really big difference in mentality and mindset, for
Mhm.
somebody who already knows and understands how to handle money and opportunity versus somebody who's having to learn how to find that for the very first time.
Yes. I think we have to teach our kids that when we're going to school, we're investing time and that
Yes.
that time needs to pay off in some way, right?
Hmm.
I know with my oldest, I did not fight him when he said he dropped out of college. He's like, I don't want to go to college anymore. It was COVID, right? And he's
Hmm.
like, I don't want to learn from online. Like I go to school because I'm interested in knowing my professor and learning from him. And I don't want to do this online business. And I didn't fight him on it. I said, okay, that's fine. Um, but he always has been an entrepreneur, Patrick, since he was little and he's had a number of businesses. Scrap metal was selling golf balls, like all kinds of things. So
Yeah.
I wasn't too worried about him. And plus, he learned the lessons about money. He's very good with money. So then he ended up getting a trade job where he was trained on the job and made more money than I did. Like,
Yeah.
that's to you, son, right?
Yeah, it's
And
it's awesome when you see it just kind of the light bulbs go off and when they formulate the ideas on their own, it's amazing to watch.
yeah, and then his friends that went the traditional route, which is college, university, got their degrees, are struggling right now to find work.
Mm,
And it's actually quite devastating for young
yes.
people that they're not getting work in their areas, in their fields. I guess
Yeah.
that's why you have to do the research. Is there work out there in your field? Yeah, like these are all the things we have to teach our kids, right?
Yes.
You're investing time, you're investing money. Is it going to pay off? You know?
Yeah, and things change on so quickly, right? Especially with the incorporation of AI and tech. And so, 10 years ago, everybody said get into coding, get into, become an engineer and all these things. And now people are saying get into the trades.
Mm,
So things happen and can change. But I've always taught my son the ability that says, you have to understand different points of view and perspectives because what's relevant today may not be relevant tomorrow. There's no guarantees.
right.
And so, some of the tasks he's learning also what he does and does not like, which oftentimes, if you don't have the experience in the work world, maybe you have to figure that out and it delays the process. But I can tell
Right.
you, my son does not mind doing inventory. I can give him a
Wow.
checklist and I'll say, here you go. Here's, go find out how much we have of each of these. And sometimes he's bringing me additional items to say, oh, we need to add this. Oh, we need to add this, right? And then there's things where I'm like, hey, go look up the price point. And he's like, do I really have to check with multiple websites? I'm like, you got to know if you got to buy it or sell it. So, for a lot of people, they hate inventory and they
Yeah.
don't mind doing the price points or they don't mind, going. So, sometimes we go to the stores to actually look for stuff on the inventory list to see if we can buy them at retail and
Yeah.
resell them online. And so he loves that part. He loves going to the store, physically shopping and looking. But if you ask him, hey, I need you to find the prices on 5 different websites, he'll do it for about 4 or 5 different pieces and he's done. But if I ask him to do an entire inventory list, he
Boring.
knocks that out. Yeah, but again, he's finding out what he likes, what he doesn't like. When I told him that he can use AI to search the different websites now, and then he was like, "Can we just build one that does all this?" I said, "Yeah, let me show you." So now he has a custom GPT that automatically searches 5 or 6 different websites and said, find the average price of this. Now he doesn't mind it so much. So
Wow.
teaching him and incorporating him to be exposed to what he does and does not like also allows him to focus on what he's good at.
That's so good. That's so good. Okay, we got a little bit off topic here, but we're going to get back to here. What are your tips, Patrick? Your tips to give parents on how we raise emotionally intelligent children?
I find this to be hard because it's a work in progress for me personally, but I feel like it's the most authentic thing that I can give you, and it's basically just to be present where your feet are. And so if you're with your family, be present with your family. put the phone away, leave that phone call. The work will still be there. The stress that you were going through will still be there, right? But, somebody told me the other day, from the time that your child is born, they say that you have about 18 summers.
Wow.
And you think about that, it's really short, but if you go through those teen stages where they don't want to hang out with you, the reality, we probably have maybe 13 summers, 14 summers.
Yes. Right.
And if you think that's a very short time, really, in the grand scheme of things. And so, I've kind of always kept that in mind that the time is limited, and because it goes so fast, the wealth that you build, yeah, it may create memories for other things later down the road, but for your kid to come back to you, and I guess our biggest fear is to basically for our kid to come back and say, "You didn't spend enough time with me. I wanted
Mhm.
more." Right? And oftentimes, especially being around business owners, that's a big regret that I hear often. And
Right.
so we didn't get into building a business to basically say, oh, yeah, we built it to have a bunch of regrets. We built
Right.
it so that way we could have that time freedom. So we could have maybe that location freedom. And oftentimes people forget that. And so my
Mhm.
suggestion and my tip is really just, again, to be mindful of what is it that you really wanted and what is it that you want your legacy to be as a parent. Because most of us are not going to have legacies that go beyond one or two generations. But if your legacy is that you set up your children for success, I don't think that's a bad legacy to have, especially as a parent.
I agree with you 100%. We have a window of time, and we have to use it well
Yes.
because we don't want to be having adult children and regretting that we didn't have enough time with them. We didn't spend enough time with them. We
Right.
didn't really get to know them because we were just hustling. We were just surviving, right?
Right. Yes.
So we have to remember that our window of time is short, and every moment counts. Like
Yes.
Patrick said, put away your phone, be present for your kids. So good. I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Patrick.
No,
I
thank you. I appreciate
really
this.
enjoyed and thank you for sharing your wisdom so we can raise more emotionally intelligent children.
Thank you
Appreciate
for your
you.
time. Likewise. Thank
Thank you,
you.
everybody. We'll see you in the next show. Thank you, parents, for joining the show today. I hope it was valuable and that you have some useful tools to use with your children. If this show blessed you or changed you in any way, I would appreciate a review on my podcast, or subscribe to my YouTube channel, or perhaps you could even recommend our masterful parenting to your family and friends. Thank you so much, parents.